It's been a few days since the trade deadline passed. I wanted to talk about a few teams that I consider winners and losers of the deadline. Now, is it way too early to declare that? Yes, but that's also what makes it fun, being able to look back at this in a year or two and seeing how poorly this ages. Let's start with the winners, with an honorable mention going to the Leafs, whose deadline I already talked about in a different video, so check that out afterwards. The first winner I want to talk about are the Boston Bruins. The Bruins are having a crazy season. Through 62 games, they're still at single-digit regulation losses. That is absurd, and to think that team got better is a pretty scary thought. The Bruins added Dmitry Orlov, Garnet Hathaway, and Tyler Bertuzzi. Garnet Hathaway is one of the most Boston Bruins looking players in the league, so him and his style of play fit right in. And the same can be said for Tyler Bertuzzi, who hasn't had a healthy season, but still adds great depth to the team. And Orlov has been fantastic. He already has 9 points in just 5 games with the Bruins, and adding him to a blue line with Lindholm and McAvoy is insane. The best team in the league by a long shot just got better. The next trade deadline winner are the New York Rangers. The Rangers had an incredible year last season, making it all the way to the conference finals. And in the offseason, lost Andrew Copp, Frank Vatrano, and Ryan Strome, but have still managed to put up a really good record in a competitive Eastern Conference. And they made significant improvements to their team, starting of course with Vladimir Tarasenko. And in 12 games with the Rangers, he has 4 goals and 5 assists. And if that addition wasn't enough, they also added another one of the biggest players available, and an all-time great player. Of course, I'm talking about Tyler Mott, who is a part of last year's conference finals team. Oh, and they also got Patrick Kane, which is cool, I guess. Jokes aside, look at this top 6. The Eastern Conference playoffs are going to be insane. The last trade deadline winner I want to talk about are the St. Louis Blues. The Blues season this year has not gone according to plan, and once it became more clear that they weren't going to be in the playoff race, they decided to get some value for their top pending free agents, trading Tarasenko to the Rangers, O'Reilly to the Leafs, and Barbashev to the Golden Knights. And now they have 3 first-round picks in this year's draft. Having young talents like Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas locked up, and 3 first-round picks in what should be a stacked draft class, is a fantastic way to kick off the rebuild. The Blues did a fantastic job of getting value out of their pending free agents, and still have a bright future ahead of them with Jordan Kyrou and Robert Thomas. Overall, a really good deadline for the Blues. Now to talk about the losers of the trade deadline, starting with the Florida Panthers. Here's a summary of all of the moves the Panthers made. Nothing. Not a single trade, which I'm very confused by. Their season hasn't gone as expected, but they find themselves in the wildcard hunt, and the teams they're chasing all made moves to get better, and they don't have an incentive to be bad this year because they traded their unprotected first-round pick to the Habs for Ben Sherratt last season. So I feel like the Panthers probably should have made some move to try to get into the playoffs so they don't end up gifting Montreal a lottery pick. Shane Gostisbehere costed a 3rd-round pick, so did Nick Bjugstad. There were some moves they could have made, and given they don't have their 1st-round pick this year, they probably should have made some move to try to get into the playoffs. Could you imagine if that pick wins the lottery? Most likely it won't, but it's still funny to think about. The next loser of the trade deadline I want to talk about are the Flyers. Here's a summary of all the moves they made. Okay, that's not entirely true. They got Brendan Lemieux in a 6th-round pick. The Flyers had one thing that they were supposed to do before the deadline, and that is trading James Van Riemsdyk, who is a pending UFA, and it looked like they succeeded, trading him to the Detroit Red Wings. But then the trade just didn't happen. Detroit couldn't make it work, and apparently no other team made an offer. Chuck Fletcher had since last offseason to try to build up a JVR trade. You also mean to tell me you couldn't find a 3rd team to do double retention? If his salary was the issue, you had one trade that you had to make, and you failed to make it. And on top of that, they didn't sell anyone else, apart from Patrick Brown. Failing to trade JVR and just letting him walk to free agency is a pretty big blunder, and those are who I feel to be the biggest winners and losers of the deadline. Of course, I would love to hear what your opinions are, and maybe consider subscribing. We're almost at 300, which is wild. And while it might be a long shot, I would love to get to 1,000 by the end of the year. But regardless, I appreciate you all for watching.